The storm had swallowed the mountain road whole, wrapping Aspen Ridge in a silence so heavy it felt like the world had stopped breathing. Snow blew sideways across the windshield of Deputy Michael Carter's patrol truck, stinging against the glass as if it wanted to carve its way inside. He leaned forward, squinting past the wipers, every nerve alive. Nights like this tested a man's patience. The endless whiteout, the way the wind screamed through the pines, the way shadows seemed to move where nothing lived. Michael was 34, but his eyes carried more years than his age admitted. 2 tours as a military police officer had left him with habits he couldn't break. The scanning of tree lines, the suspicion of every blind curve, the readiness to reach for the sidearm at the smallest flicker of movement. Life in Aspen Ridge should have been quieter, a place where people knew your name at the diner, and the worst call you got was a drunk stumbling home. But storms had a way of hiding more than snowdrifts. Tonight the air carried a scent he recognized from long ago, diesel and pine, sharpened by the cold. Something was off. He eased off the accelerator, rolling the window down a crack. The storm hissed inside, bringing with it a faint, high-pitched sound. Not the wind, not an animal, a cry. His pulse jumped. He snapped on the high beams, slicing the dark. The lights caught movement to his right, just beyond the fence line of an abandoned lumberyard. For a heartbeat, he thought it was a man working a chain in the snow. Then the scene resolved, and his stomach tightened into stone. A tall, wiry figure was kicking at something chained to a rusted fence. The figure's leather-gloved hands clutched a sawed-off shotgun by the stock, using it not as a firearm, but as a club. The blows fell hard and fast, each one punctuated by a shout that carried across the clearing. "My cargo doesn't run." Michael's boots hit the snow before he realized he had even stopped the truck. The sight cut through the storm like a knife, an animal, a German shepherd, chained short, her belly swollen with pregnancy, legs buckling as the man's kicks landed. Snow splashed red under her paws. "Sheriff's Department!" Michael's voice ripped through the night. He drew his pistol in one smooth motion, sights locking on the man. "Drop it, now!" The attacker froze, face twisted in the glare of headlights. Michael recognized him instantly. Ray Vaughn, known in hushed bar conversations as the Snake, a name earned from the coiled rattlesnake tattoo crawling up his neck and his uncanny ability to slither out of charges. He was 33, all angles and wiry rage, his bomber jacket stained, jeans ripped, boots steel-toed. For one tense heartbeat, predator and lawman locked eyes. Vaughn spat into the snow, muttered something Michael couldn't hear, then bolted toward the tree line. "Stop! Hands where I can see them!" Michael's voice cracked like a rifle shot. But Vaughn was already a blur in the storm, swallowed by the pines. Michael advanced, gun still raised, until the man disappeared completely. The only sound left was the wind-rattling broken boards of the old lumber yard and the ragged, pitiful whimper from the fence. He turned, lowering his weapon. The German shepherd lay crumpled, chain biting into her neck. Her fur, once thick black and tan, was matted with mud and ice. Her belly heaved with each tremor. When her eyes lifted to his, wide and dulled by exhaustion, Michael's chest clenched as if a fist had gripped his heart. "Hey, girl," he said, voice softening in a way it hadn't in years. "Hang on, I've got you." Holstering his weapon, he pulled a multi-tool from his belt and dropped to his knees. The padlock on the chain was rusted, but the metal gave under the saw blade. The snap rang out sharp against the storm. The dog sagged forward, almost collapsing into him. Michael slid his arms beneath her, feeling the tremor in her ribs, the taut weight of unborn puppies shifting under his grip. She was lighter than she should have been, her body starved thin beneath the pregnancy. Snow stung his face as he lifted her, pressing her heat through his gloves. He turned toward the truck, but something caught his eye. A faint glow in the snow, just beside the fence post. He crouched carefully, the dog still in his arms, and saw it. A cheap burner phone, screen cracked, battery somehow alive. A message blinked across the display. "MK delivery failed. Get it back now." Below it, an attachment rows of code numbers under the heading K9 Inventory. Michael's jaw tightened. MK, Marcus Kane. The name was whispered like a curse in the sheriff's office. Kane's reach stretched far beyond Aspen Ridge. Rumors of trafficking, contraband, and men like Vaughn working the dirty jobs. He slipped the phone into an evidence bag, then carried the shepherd to the truck. "You're safe now," he murmured, sliding her onto the back seat and covering her with his spare duty jacket. She whimpered once, curling into the warmth, eyes fluttering shut. The engine roared to life, headlights cutting another path through the blizzard. As Michael steered toward town, the snow thickened, erasing the tire tracks behind him. His radio crackled faintly with dispatch chatter, but he hardly heard it. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. The dog's sides rose and fell shallowly, each breath a fragile thread holding her to life. He tightened his grip on the wheel. This wasn't just cruelty, it was a message, and he had just intercepted it. Vaughn hadn't been acting alone. The dog wasn't just a victim, she was evidence. Michael whispered to the silent cab, as much a promise to himself as to the trembling shepherd. Nobody's going to hurt you again. The patrol truck rumbled past shuttered shops and snow-piled porches of Main Street. The town slept under the storm, unaware of the battle already brewing in its shadows. At the far end of the street, the green sign of the veterinary clinic swung in the wind, its lights glowing warm and steady against the night. Michael slowed, breath fogging the windshield, mind racing. He didn't know yet what secrets this dog carried, but the burner phone in his pocket and the blood in the snow whispered the same truth. This was no random act. It was the first crack in something much larger. And as he lifted the shepherd once more, pushing through the clinic's door, a question carved itself into his thoughts, sharp as the storm outside. What if saving her life meant uncovering a network that could tear Aspen Ridge apart? The bell above the clinic door gave a soft chime as Michael pushed inside, cradling the dog against his chest. Heat washed over him, carrying the faint scent of antiseptic and cedar bedding. The storm roared behind the glass, but here the world narrowed to warm yellow light and the fragile weight in his arms. "Dr. Hart," Michael's voice cracked across the small reception area. A woman appeared from the back, wiping her hands on a towel. She was petite but strong-armed, her dark hair pulled into a loose bun, eyes sharp with both fatigue and steady calm. Olivia Hart had grown up in Aspen Ridge, left for veterinary school in Denver, and come back when no one else wanted to work the mountain towns. Tonight, her eyes widened at the sight of blood streaking Michael's jacket and the limp form of the shepherd. "Set her down here," she said, already pulling on gloves. Michael laid the dog on the examination table. The shepherd whimpered, but didn't resist, her tail tucked tight beneath her body. Olivia's hands moved quickly, practiced. She pressed along the flank, checked the gums, the swelling belly. "She's in late pregnancy," Olivia murmured, "and badly dehydrated." Her gloved fingers paused at the ridge of scar tissue under the fur at the dog's neck. "There's something embedded here." Michael reached into his pocket, pulling out the burner phone. She was chained at the lumberyard. Beaten. The guy ran. Left this behind. Olivia barely glanced up, but her frown deepened. She retrieved a handheld scanner from the counter. The beep cut sharp through the quiet. Numbers flashed across the display. Her brows knit. "This isn't a normal ID. It's a law enforcement K-9 registry code." Michael straightened. "Law enforcement?" "Yeah, this girl belonged to a federal program. That unit shut down 6 months ago. Several animals reported missing." Olivia looked at him, eyes hard. "She's not just a stray deputy. She was trained." Michael felt his jaw tighten. The message on the phone, the chain, the bruises blooming under the fur. He remembered the way Vaughn had shouted at her, like she was merchandise gone wrong. "She's part of it," he muttered. Olivia continued her exam, finding a healed surgical line in the ear, likely an implant from earlier training. She drew a blood sample, her movement swift and deliberate. When the vial filled, she tilted it against the light. A strange shimmer glinted in the red. "There's residue here," she said softly. She dipped a strip, watched the color shift faintly blue. "Traces of narcotics." Michael swore under his breath. "They used her as a carrier." "Not inside," Olivia corrected, "but on her fur, in wounds, maybe sewn into collars or harnesses. This residue means direct contact." Her voice hardened. "And she's pregnant. That makes it worse." The shepherd stirred, letting out a low moan. Michael rested a hand against her head, feeling the tremor in her muscles. Her amber eyes flicked to him, alert but wary. "She's been trained," he whispered. "Look at the way she's watching us. She wants to trust, but she's waiting for the next blow." Olivia prepared a saline drip, sliding the needle gently into the dog's foreleg. The shepherd shivered once, then settled as fluid began to flow. Olivia's voice softened. "You did the right thing, bringing her here. Another hour outside and she might have lost the litter." Michael nodded, but his thoughts churned. Vaughn, Kane, the coded list on the phone, narcotics traces. The storm howled against the window, rattling glass panes as if reminding him the world outside wasn't safe. "She'll need a secure place to recover," Olivia said. "This clinic is safe for tonight, but if they chained her up in public, they won't hesitate to come looking." Michael scanned the room, metal tables, cabinets of supplies, the faint hum of a heater. It smelled like antiseptic and cedar bedding, a mix of hospital and barn. He tugged his coat tighter. "I'll post a unit outside if I can. Tomorrow, I'll run the serial number on her chip. pull her handler file. We'll know more. Olivia gave a short nod, adjusting the IV. If you're right about traffickers, we're standing in the middle of something big. Michael crouched, meeting the dog's amber eyes. We'll get them, he promised. The shepherd blinked once, slow and deliberate, then rested her head on her paws. The storm battered the windows, snow piling against the sills. Michael thought of Vaughn's silhouette disappearing into the trees, of the burner phone still glowing in his pocket. He thought of Marcus Kane, a name muttered in every law enforcement circle, a shadow that stretched across the Rockies. Somewhere out there, Vaughn was already reporting back. Somewhere out there, Kane would soon know that a shepherd he had written off as cargo was alive. And if Kane wanted her back, he would come. Olivia checked the monitor one last time, then dimmed the overhead lights. She's stable for now, but she's still in danger. So are you. Michael sat in the chair beside the table, pistol holstered at his side but within reach. He could still hear Vaughn's voice echoing in the storm. My cargo doesn't run. He reached out, brushing his fingers lightly against the shepherd's fur. She didn't flinch this time. You've got a name now, he whispered. Sierra, that's who you are. The dog's breathing steadied, her belly rising and falling under the thin blanket Olivia had draped over her. For a moment, peace hung in the small clinic, fragile as a snowflake balanced on glass. Then a noise broke it. A scrape against the side wall, faint but deliberate. Michael's head snapped up. He moved to the window, cracking the blinds with 2 fingers. Snow swirled in the streetlight halo outside, empty. But just at the edge of the lot, beyond the plow pile drifts, a shadow shifted too large, too steady to be the wind. Michael's hand went to his holster. He exhaled slowly, eyes narrowing. Was Vaughn already back? The snow had slowed to a steady drizzle by the time Michael Cole eased Sierra into the back of his patrol SUV. Her body felt heavier now, not just with pregnancy, but with the weight of what he knew. He drove through the muffled silence of Aspen Ridge, headlights carving a path through snowbanks that glistened like glass. At the small brick police station on Maple Street, Michael carried Sierra inside, wrapped in a thermal blanket. The building was modest. 3 offices, dispatch, a small holding cell, and tucked in the back, a kennel room used for strays or evidence animals. Not much, but safer than the lumberyard, safer than the clinic. He set Sierra down inside the kennel, lined with fleece mats. She hesitated at the sight of bars and tile, ears flicking. Michael crouched, voice low. It's just for now, girl. You're safe. She circled once and lay down, amber eyes never leaving the door. Michael moved to his desk, the burner phone in an evidence bag. The coded spreadsheet inside haunted him. Endless rows of numbers, each matching the missing K9 registry Olivia had scanned. It wasn't just Sierra. Dozens of dogs had vanished. A whole pipeline. The front door creaked. Officer Daniel Ruiz stepped in, snow dusting his shoulders. 27, fresh from academy, his patrol jacket still stiff. Daniel carried eagerness like a badge. Morning, deputy. Dispatch sent me to log the animal. He glanced toward the kennel and blinked. She's huge. Poor thing. Dakota, Michael corrected softly, then shook his head. No, Sierra. That's her name now. Daniel jotted it on his clipboard. You want me to log her under evidence? Michael hesitated, eyes scanning the monitor feeds. The motion alarm had tripped twice overnight. Shadows in the alley, maybe deer, maybe not. He leaned back in his chair. Keep it off the radio. We're sitting on something bigger than a cruelty case. Daniel's brows rose, but he didn't push. He wandered toward the monitor, pointing at the flicker on screen. That's not a deer, he muttered. A hooded figure lingered at the back fence before slipping out of frame. Michael's stomach knotted. Not deer, he whispered. Run a patrol past the alley every hour, and save that footage off-site. Daniel nodded, already scribbling notes. Michael turned back to the burner phone, scrolling through photos. One froze his blood. A dim storage room lined with cages. Dogs stared out shaved patches where IVs had been inserted, muzzles raw from rubbing steel. Another photo showed a border map studded with pins. He printed the images, pinned them to the corkboard above his desk. The pattern stretched north, toward the Canadian line. Kane wasn't just trafficking dogs. He was using them to run product across borders. A sharp bark cut the air. Michael spun. Sierra stood rigid in her kennel, ears pricked, gaze fixed on the side door. Her growl was low, vibrating like distant thunder. You hear it too, Michael murmured. The intercom buzzed. Cole, it's Ruiz. Dr. Hart's here. Says she's got results. Michael exhaled. Let her in the side entrance. Moments later, Olivia appeared, snow clinging to her boots, messenger bag slung over her shoulder. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes alert. How's she holding up? Alert, Michael said, but on edge. Olivia set her bag on the counter, pulling out papers and a flash drive. Blood panels confirmed narcotics residue, multiple markers. Whoever handled her was using her as a moving test subject. Michael clenched his jaw. Figures. And look at this. Olivia clicked open files on the flash drive. Trial run data. Rows of numbers scrolled, each paired with code words. At the bottom, a familiar ID. Sierra's chip. She was one of their test runs, Olivia whispered. They built her tolerance, checked her tracking. When she got pregnant, they tried to discard her. Michael swore under his breath. They weren't just hurting animals, they were weaponizing them. Before Olivia could answer, Sierra barked again, sharper this time. Michael peered through the blinds. A dark sedan rolled slowly past, windows tinted, plates missing. His stomach dropped. They're checking. Olivia's fingers brushed Sierra's fur through the bars. She remembers. She can smell them. Michael pulled a heavy blanket over the kennel to give her cover. We'll keep her hidden. For now. Hours dragged. The storm eased into pale daylight. Michael sifted through more files, Olivia cross-referencing locations. Each discovery painted a larger, darker picture. Warehouses bought under shell companies, transport routes disguised as freight. The chime at the front desk rang. Daniel poked his head in. Delivery truck just pulled up. Says he's dropping supplies. Michael frowned. We didn't order anything. Through the glass he saw the driver, a tall man in a brown jacket, ball cap low, clipboard in hand. Something about the stance made his pulse spike. The man pushed open the door, stamping snow from his boots. His smile was practiced. His eyes darted toward the hallway. Afternoon, officers. Got a shipment for you. Michael's hand slid toward his holster. Paperwork? The man handed over a blank form. Daniel slipped out to check plates. Then it happened. From the kennel, Sierra erupted a thunderous bark that shook the walls. Her hackles rose, teeth bared, eyes locked on the man. His smile faltered. Michael's voice was flat steel. That your first time here, Ricky? The snake tattoo on his neck slid into view above the collar. Vaughn. Daniel's voice crackled over the radio outside. Deputy plates are fake. Truck stolen. Ricky lunged for the exit. Michael grabbed his sleeve, slammed him into the door frame. They grappled, boots skidding on tile. The clipboard clattered to the floor. Sierra roared from the kennel, teeth gnashing against bars. Ricky twisted free, bolting into the alley. Michael tore after him, snow crunching under his boots. The delivery truck idled, back door half open. Inside, empty boxes stacked like walls. He yanked them aside. A duffel bag sat at the bottom. Inside, zip ties, a muzzle, a syringe kit. Michael's pulse thundered. They weren't just watching, they were planning to take Sierra back. By the time he sprinted into the street, Ricky was gone, his footprints veering toward the frozen creek. Michael returned inside, adrenaline still humming. Daniel looked pale. He came right in, deputy, bold as hell. Michael slammed the duffel onto his desk. He'll be bolder next time. He plugged the SD card into his laptop. Grainy videos filled the screen. Dogs forced through obstacle courses, men timing them with stopwatches, syringes plunging into veins, Vaughn's voice barking orders. The last video froze Michael cold. Marcus Kane himself. His voice low, deliberate. Get that shepherd back before it talks with its eyes. My cargo doesn't run. Michael muted the sound, jaw tight. For the first time, he had Kane's voice on record. Olivia stood beside him, eyes wide. That warehouse, those markings on the walls. I've seen it. Old shipping depot north of town. Michael pinned the printouts to the board, connecting threads with red marker. Each line pointed toward Kane. Sierra whined low from the kennel, eyes sharp, body tense. Michael crouched, sliding water under the gate. We've got proof now, girl. Proof to bring them down. But even as he spoke, a noise drew his attention. On the security feed, the alley camera flickered. A shape moved into frame, hooded, lingering, then a flash like the glint of glass. Michael's throat tightened. A scope. The monitor went black. The storm pressed heavy against the walls of the Aspen Ridge police station, snow hissing across the windows like sand in a desert wind. Inside, the building glowed dimly under fluorescent lights, quiet except for the low hum of the heater and Sierra's steady breathing from her kennel. Michael sat at his desk, eyes locked on the blackened monitor. The alley camera had cut to static. He rose, moving to the window, parting the blinds just enough to look outside. Snow whirled in restless spirals, street lamps bending light through the haze. Nothing. But his gut screamed otherwise. He eased his pistol from its holster, every muscle tense. Behind him, Sierra let out a low, throaty growl. Her belly heaved, her paws scraping against the mat. Michael glanced back, alarm prickling. She wasn't just warning, she was straining. The door creaked. Olivia Hart stepped in, shaking snow from her parka. "I came as soon as you called." She froze at the look on his face. "What is it?" Michael jerked his head at the black monitor. "They're here." Olivia's eyes darted to Sierra. The shepherd whimpered, then let out a sharp bark. Her body rippled with another contraction. Olivia's breath caught. "She's in labor. Now." Before Michael could answer, glass shattered at the rear window. A shot cracked, splinters sprang across the desk. Michael shoved Olivia to the floor, returning fire through the frame. Snow exploded outside as bullets met walls. "Move her!" Michael shouted. Olivia scrambled to the kennel, flinging the door open. Sierra staggered but obeyed, muscles trembling as Olivia coaxed her toward the back rescue room. The shepherd whined, lowering herself onto the blanket. Olivia spread across the tile floor. Another contraction tore through her body. Michael crouched in the hall, firing twice at Shadows, darting through the snow outside. Daniel Ruiz appeared from dispatch, shotgun in hand, face pale. "They're surrounding us!" "Hold the front," Michael barked. Gunfire erupted, echoing through the night. Muzzle flashes lit the storm. Shadows pressed close, figures in dark coats and masks. Vaughn's voice cut through the chaos. "Get the dog!" Michael's blood burned. He fired again, dropping one man near the fence. But more came, closing in like wolves. Inside the rescue room, Olivia worked quickly. "Focus, girl. Breathe. You can do this." The first puppy slid into her hands, slick and trembling. She rubbed it with a towel until a squeak filled the air. She laid it against Sierra's belly. The shepherd licked her pup once, fiercely protective even through pain. Another shot tore the hall. Michael ducked, reloading, adrenaline hammering. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, firing into the snow. "We can't hold them." Michael's eyes swept the corridor, the evidence room, the kennel. He knew what Vaughn wanted. Not the building, not him, Sierra. "Keep firing," he snapped, then bolted back to the rescue room. Olivia looked up, sweat beading her brow. "She's in the middle of it. I can't move her." A loud thud shook the rear wall. Smoke hissed through the vents. Tear gas. Michael swore, yanking his scarf higher. "They're forcing us out." Sierra whimpered as the second puppy came. Olivia caught it, rubbed fast, laid it against its mother. Two tiny squeals joined the thunder of gunfire. Michael pressed his shoulder to the doorframe, pistol raised. A shadow lunged from the smoke, rifle up. Michael fired once, center mass. The man dropped. Vaughn's snarl echoed beyond the haze. "You can't stop us, Cole. Hand her over." Michael gritted his teeth. "Over my dead body." Another blast rattled the station. The evidence room erupted in flame. Narcotics seized months ago, igniting in a fireball that sent alarms screaming. Smoke rolled through the hall, choking and thick. Daniel coughed, pumping the shotgun. "We're done, deputy." Michael grabbed his radio. "This is Deputy Cole Station under attack. Shots fired. Officer down imminent. Need backup now." Static hissed back. The line jammed. Olivia cried out, "Michael, the third one!" He spun back. Sierra pushed hard, body trembling, eyes wide with fear. Olivia guided the puppy free, rubbing it fast, coaxing a weak squeak. She tucked it with the others. Sierra licked them feverishly, her body quaking with exhaustion. The door burst inward. Vaughn stood there, rifle raised, eyes gleaming under the flicker of flames. "Step aside," he growled. Michael fired. Vaughn ducked, the shot grazing his shoulder. He roared, charging forward. They collided, weapons clattering across tile. The fight was brutal, fists and elbows in the haze. Vaughn slammed Michael against the counter, snarling in his face. "She's mine!" Michael shoved back, slamming Vaughn into the wall. Sierra's growl rose, guttural and primal. She lunged despite her exhaustion, sinking teeth into Vaughn's leg. He screamed, kicking, but she held. Michael drove his fist into Vaughn's jaw. Once, twice, blood sprayed. Vaughn staggered, ripping free from Sierra's bite. He stumbled into the smoke, clutching his leg, and vanished through the shattered doorway. Gunfire outside faded as sirens wailed in the distance. Reinforcements. Vaughn's crew scattered, boots crunching into the storm. Michael dropped to his knees beside Sierra. She lay curled around her three puppies, chest heaving, eyes glazed but fierce. Olivia's hands shook as she checked them, tears glinting in her eyes. They're alive, all of them. Flames licked higher in the evidence room. Daniel coughed, dragging a fire extinguisher from the hall. Backup sirens grew louder. Michael staggered to his feet, closing the door against the smoke. For the first time that night, silence pressed heavy. Sierra lifted her head weakly, licking one puppy, then fixing her amber eyes on Michael. He felt something tighten in his chest. She had fought through hell, delivered life in the middle of chaos, and still guarded them with every shred of strength left. "You're safe now," he whispered. "I promise." The sound of boots thudded through the hall as state troopers burst inside, weapons raised. Sergeant Paul Grady, his gray mustache bristling, scanned the wreckage. "Jesus Christ, what happened here?" Michael straightened, blood streaking his knuckles. "Vaughn. He came for her. Almost got her." Grady's gaze shifted to Sierra and the pups. His jaw tightened. "Then we move fast. Kane won't stop." Michael nodded, glancing once more at the shattered window, smoke still curling into the night. Vaughn had escaped again. But next time, Michael knew, he wouldn't just come for Sierra. He'd bring hell with him. Outside, the storm cleared just enough to reveal tire tracks slicing away from the station, leading north into the trees. Michael's gut twisted. Vaughn wasn't retreating. He was regrouping. And, somewhere out there, Marcus Kane was waiting. The firehouse clock read nearly 4 a.m. when Michael finally staggered into the briefing room. His uniform was scorched at the shoulder, knuckles raw, eyes rimmed red from smoke. The attack had left the station half ruined, the evidence room gutted, but Sierra and her 3 pups were alive, huddled in the rescue kennel under Olivia's careful watch. Troopers moved through the halls, sealing off windows, taking statements, snapping photographs. The building smelled of ash and disinfectant, layered over with the sharp tang of adrenaline. Sergeant Paul Grady set down a folder thick with reports, his lined face hard. "Vaughn hit us head on," he said, voice gravel. "That's bold. Too bold for a man acting alone." Michael rubbed his temples. "He's moving on Kane's orders. I heard him, the way he said, 'She's mine.' He wasn't talking about the dog. He was talking about Kane's cargo." Grady leaned back in his chair. "Then, Kane's got his claws deeper in Aspen Ridge than we thought." Daniel Ruiz pushed into the room, a bandage on his arm where glass had sliced him. He carried a printout from the highway cams. "I pulled this off the state system. A convoy ran north an hour before the attack. 2 vans, 1 semi, all with altered plates." Michael's gaze sharpened. The map pinned on his corkboard showed Kane's pattern, the border, the warehouses, the ghost properties, and all of it pointed north. Olivia entered quietly, hair loose from its bun, fatigue etched across her face. She carried a steaming mug, set it in front of Michael. "Sierra's stable. Pups are nursing. But we can't stay here. If Vaughn found us once, he'll find us again." Michael sipped the coffee, bitter and hot. "Then we move her, and we take the fight to Kane before he comes back." Olivia frowned. "You're talking about a raid." "Not a raid," Michael said. "A rescue. For every animal on that inventory list. Sierra wasn't the only one." Grady opened the folder, revealing a satellite photo of a fuel depot near the border. "This is our best shot. Abandoned rail spur, perfect for hiding freight. And it matches the graffiti in Kane's training videos." Michael studied the image, tracing the road that cut through pine forest to the depot. "That's where Vaughn's running. If we hit it right, we don't just save the dogs, we cut Kane's supply line." Olivia crossed her arms, eyes narrowing. "And if you're wrong?" Michael looked at her, voice steady. "Then Kane keeps building his empire on the backs of animals like Sierra. I can't let that happen." Silence hung for a moment, broken only by the groan of the building settling under snow. Finally, Grady nodded. "We'll need state support, and you'll need someone watching your back." "I've got someone," Michael said. "Agent Sarah Whitfield, Division of Criminal Investigation. She's been chasing Kane longer than anyone." Grady grunted. "Then call her. We move tonight." By dawn, the plan was in motion. Troopers rotated shifts, disguising vehicles, prepping gear. Olivia packed medical kits, blankets, syringes. Daniel checked and rechecked his shotgun, his boyish face now hardened by firelight. Michael walked the kennel row. Sierra lifted her head, ears twitching, pups pressed close against her belly. Her amber eyes followed him, unblinking. "You've done your part," he whispered. "Now it's my turn." He crouched, letting her sniff his hand. She licked his fingers once, slow, as if sealing a pact. That evening, the convoy rolled out under a bruised sky. Headlights off. Snow whispered across the asphalt, pine trees looming on either side. In the lead SUV, Michael sat beside Sarah Whitfield, who had arrived in a black parka, her blonde hair streaked with gray, scars along her throat catching the glow of the dashboard. "You're running hot," she said, flipping through the files. "Too hot. Vaughn won't be careless again." Michael kept his eyes on the road. "He's already careless. He attacked a police station. That's desperation." Sarah's gaze cut to him. "Or strategy. Don't forget who you're dealing with. Marcus Kane builds chaos like other men build houses." The convoy pulled off the main road, tires crunching onto a snow-packed service track. Up ahead, The silhouette of the depot rose from the tree's corrugated steel walls, graffiti scrawled across rusted panels, floodlights cutting pale circles in the snow. Michael's pulse quickened. The plan was simple. 2 teams flanking north and south, quiet entry, seize whatever dogs or evidence remained. But nothing about Kane was ever simple. They killed the engines. The air hung brittle, so still that every breath seemed to echo. Sarah raised a fist. On me, no sirens, no mistakes. Troopers moved into formation, rifles low. Michael's boots crunched softly as he advanced, every step deliberate. Snow pressed against his jacket, cold biting through the seams. They breached the side door with a crowbar. Metal groaned. The air inside hit them like a wall rank with animal musk, chemicals, and the iron tang of fear. Flashlights carved beams through the gloom. Rows of cages lined the floor, some empty, others holding dogs with raw muzzles and trembling limbs. Eyes blinked against the light, too weary to bark. Michael's chest tightened. Jesus. Olivia slipped in behind him, medical bag slung over her shoulder. She knelt by the nearest cage, murmuring soft words to a shepherd with scarred ears. We'll get you out. Sarah's voice cut through the dark. Teams, split, secure the perimeter. But as they fanned out, a faint beeping echoed from the far corner. Michael's stomach sank. Trap! He shouted. The explosion tore through the depot. Smoke and fire swallowed the room. Dogs yelped in terror. Troopers shouted, diving for cover. Michael dragged Olivia behind a stack of crates as shrapnel tore overhead. Through the smoke came laughter. Vaughn's voice, mocking and close. Too slow, deputy. Figures darted through the haze, rifles flashing. Gunfire erupted, chaos tearing the night. Michael shoved Olivia toward the cages. Get them out! He raised his pistol, firing into the shadows. A masked gunman dropped, but more pressed in. Dogs barked wildly now, a chorus of panic. Olivia's hands flew, snapping locks, coaxing trembling bodies free. One shepherd bolted, another cowered against the bars. She whispered frantically, trying to steady them as bullets cracked overhead. Michael moved through the smoke, vision stinging. He caught a glimpse of Vaughn slipping through the rear door, a duffel slung over his shoulder. Michael fired, but the bullet sparked off steel. Vaughn vanished into the storm. Cole, Sarah's voice rang out. We've got movement outside, trucks pulling out. Michael's pulse thundered. Kane wasn't just guarding the depot. He was moving the operation even as they attacked. He sprinted to the loading bay, skidding across wet concrete. Through the smoke, he saw headlights flashing, vans revving, tires spitting snow. Vaughn leapt into the passenger seat of the lead truck, the snake tattoo on his neck catching the light. Michael raised his pistol. Too far. The trucks roared away, swallowed by the blizzard. Behind him, Olivia cried out, Michael! He spun. A shepherd lay in her arms, trembling violently, blood staining its muzzle. Olivia's face was pale, stricken. They dosed them, heavily. If we don't move fast, we'll lose them. Troopers rushed in, some dragging cages, others dousing the flames. The depot was collapsing, smoke clawing toward the rafters. Michael holstered his pistol, his jaw tight. They had rescued some, but too many were gone. Vaughn had slipped away again, carrying whatever Kane had planned next. As the surviving dogs were loaded into rescue trucks, Sarah appeared at Michael's side, face ashen. She held up a charred folder, pulled from a desk half burned in the blast. The cover read, Trial Series B. Inside, soaked pages listed numbers and notes. At the bottom, a name. Agent Linda Marquez. Missing 3 months. Last seen alive at this very depot. Michael's blood ran cold. She's here. Sarah's voice was grim. Or she was. The convoy pulled out into the night, flames licking the sky behind them. Olivia sat in the back with the dogs, her hands steady, despite the tremor in her shoulders. Michael drove, eyes fixed on the road, the word Marquez echoing in his mind. They had saved some lives tonight, but Kane's net was wider, and now a missing federal agent's name was tangled in it. As they crested the ridge, snow whipping across the windshield, Michael's radio crackled faintly through static. A woman's voice, weak, strained. Help! They've got more. The transmission cut. Michael's knuckles whitened on the wheel. Was that her? Olivia whispered. The radio hissed again. Then silence. The convoy rolled into the outskirts of Aspen Ridge just before dawn. Smoke still clung to their coats, the rescued dogs whimpering in the back of the trucks. Michael's eyes were red from exhaustion, but the faint, broken voice on the radio gnawed at him. He'd heard it. Olivia had heard it. Sarah Whitfield had heard it too. A woman gasping through static. Help. They've got more. Now, the voice was gone. Inside the station's temporary command post, a borrowed community hall, Since the evidence room lay in ashes, troopers huddled around a table covered in maps and reports. Michael set the charred folder down. The name burned into the page stared back. Agent Linda Marquez. Sarah leaned over, her scarred throat tight as she spoke. Linda was one of ours. She went undercover near the border 3 months ago. Last ping was from that depot you just hit, and now we have her name in Kane's files. Olivia rubbed her temples, fatigue shadowing her pale face. If she sent that call, she's still alive. Michael looked at Sarah. Where would Kane take her? Sarah tapped the map, finger pressing on a decommissioned rail yard 15 miles north. This place. It used to move freight before the mining collapse. Now it's just rust and shadows. If Kane wanted a ghost site, this would be it. Michael's jaw tightened. Then, that's where we go. Grady folded his arms, mustache bristling. You're running on fumes, Cole. You can't charge into another hornet's nest without a plan. Michael's gaze drifted toward the back, where Sierra lay curled with her pups. Her eyes glowed faintly in the half-light, watching him with a steadiness that calmed and pushed him all at once. We don't have time, he said quietly. Not if Marquez is alive. Sarah exhaled, then nodded. We go, but we do it smart. By midday, the snow had cleared enough to move. Sarah requisitioned unmarked SUVs. Olivia insisted on coming, arguing that if they found survivors human or canine, they'd need medical care on the spot. Michael didn't fight her. He knew they'd need her calm hands. They drove north, under a sky the color of steel, past frozen creeks and abandoned barns sagging under the weight of forgotten winters. Michael led the convoy, his grip on the wheel firm, his mind replaying the broken voice on the radio. Help, they've got more. When the rail yard came into view, it looked like a graveyard of steel. Gantries rusted to bone, freight cars tipped on their sides half buried in snow, the switching tower looming like a skeleton against the gray sky. They parked a quarter-mile out. The air was razor cold, the kind that made every breath cut like glass. Sarah raised her binoculars, scanning the site. No guards, she murmured. Too quiet. Michael checked his sidearm, slid the rifle strap over his shoulder. That means they want us to walk in. Olivia looked at him, her green eyes unwavering. Then don't walk. Hunt. They advanced in 2 teams, boots muffled by snow. Michael led Olivia and Daniel along the west flank, while Sarah and Grady circled east. The silence was eerie, broken only by the distant groan of wind through hollow steel. Inside the yard, Michael signaled for a halt. He knelt beside a half-buried rail tie, brushing snow aside. Fresh boot prints, large, heavy. Leading toward the switching tower, he raised a fist. Move. They crept closer. At the base of the tower, the prints multiplied, crisscrossing like tangled wires. Michael motioned Olivia back, then pushed the door open with his boot. The air inside was damp, thick with mildew. The floor was scattered with empty food wrappers, cigarette butts, and in the corner, a cot with restraints bolted to the frame. Michael's pulse quickened. On the blanket lay a torn ID badge. He picked it up. The photo was charred at the edges, but the name remained. Linda Marquez. Michael, Olivia whispered. She pointed to the wall, scratched into the metal, jagged but desperate. Help. 3. Below. Michael's stomach dropped. She's here. A faint sound drifted upward. A cough. Weak. Human. Michael's chest tightened. He flicked his flashlight toward a grated trapdoor in the floor. Chains locked it shut. Daniel rushed forward with bolt cutters, snapping the links. Michael hauled the grate open. A stairwell yawned into darkness, the air reeking of damp and something sharper bleach, maybe, or blood. Stay behind me, he told Olivia. They descended into the black, flashlights carving tunnels through the dark. The basement was a maze of concrete corridors, dripping pipes, rust-stained walls, and cages. Rows of them. Dogs cowered inside, eyes wide, muzzles scarred. Some whimpered, others growled low. Olivia's breath caught. Oh God. Michael scanned fast. Marquez, he called, voice echoing. Agent Marquez. Silence. Then, from the far end, a whisper. Here. They sprinted. In the last cell, slumped against the wall, was a woman. Her dark hair hung matted over her face, wrists bruised from restraints, but her eyes tired, unbroken, lifted to meet his. Linda Marcus. Michael breathed. She tried to rise, stumbled. Michael caught her, easing her weight onto his arm. We've got you. Her voice cracked. They moved them, not just dogs, people, experiments. Kane's running something bigger. Before Michael could answer, the overhead lights blazed on. Voices shouted, boots thundered. The stairwell door slammed above. Vaughn's voice echoed down the concrete corridor. Welcome to the cage, deputy. Michael raised his rifle, heart hammering. They were trapped underground, with cages of trembling dogs, a half-conscious federal agent, and Vaughn's crew closing in. Olivia clutched her medical bag tighter, her eyes darting between the dogs and Michael. "We can't fight them all down here." Michael's gaze swept the basement. Pipes, cages, concrete. One way in, no way out. Unless. He spotted a ventilation shaft, low and rusted, leading toward the outer yard. "Daniel, cover us," he barked. "Olivia, get her ready. We're moving." Boots pounded closer. Vaughn's laugh slithered through the dark. "Run if you want. There's no hole deep enough." Michael knelt beside Marquez, pressing a hand to her shoulder. "You're getting out, I promise." Above, the stairwell door clanged open. Flashlights cut beams into the gloom. Michael swung his rifle toward the light. "Move now!" The first shot rang out. Concrete chipped. Dogs barked in a frenzy. Smoke grenades clattered down the steps, hissing white clouds into the air. Michael fired, dragging Marquez toward the shaft as Olivia shoved cages open, letting panicked dogs scatter into the smoke. Daniel laid down cover fire, buckshot thundering against steel. Chaos erupted. Vaughn's men poured into the basement, masked, rifles blazing. Michael shoved Marquez through the shaft, Olivia crawling behind with her bag. Daniel fired one last round before diving in, smoke choking the air. Michael followed last, bullets sparking off the metal walls as he pulled the grate shut behind him. They crawled through the darkness, the sound of shouts and barking fading behind them. The shaft spat them out into the frozen yard, snow blinding under floodlights. Marquez collapsed into the drifts, coughing. Olivia shielded her, checking pulse, whispering reassurance. Daniel scrambled to reload, scanning the shadows. Michael rose, rifle steady, his eyes locked on the switching tower. Through the swirling snow, Vaughn stood at the window, his face pale, eyes burning. He raised a hand in mock salute, then disappeared. Michael's chest heaved. They had Marquez. They had proof. But Vaughn was still out there, and Kane's shadow loomed larger than ever. As Sarah and Grady's team converged, hauling survivors into trucks, Marquez clutched Michael's sleeve with trembling fingers. Her voice was a rasp. "You don't understand. Kane's not just moving dogs. He's building an army." Michael froze. "What do you mean?" Marquez's eyes flicked to the trees, wild with fear. "He's using them, training them, for more than smuggling." Before Michael could press her, the night split with a howl. Not just one dog, many, dozens. From the tree line came shapes, dark and fast, moving with terrifying precision. Olivia's eyes widened. "Oh my God, what is that?" Michael's rifle snapped up. His heart hammered. Had Kane unleashed them already? The howl that ripped across the frozen yard was unlike anything Michael Cole had ever heard. Not a wild wolf, not a desperate stray. It was sharp, synchronized, and multiplied by dozens. From the tree line, dark shapes emerged, low to the ground, moving with terrifying discipline. Eyes caught the floodlight glare, glowing like embers scattered through snow. The air thickened. Even the rescue dogs whimpered, pressing against the cages in the trucks. Olivia's breath fogged fast as she whispered, He's trained them." Agent Linda Marquez clutched Michael's arm, her voice a rasp. "This is what I meant, not smugglers. Soldiers." Sarah Whitfield's radio hissed. "Cole, we've got movement east and west, multiple heat signatures closing fast. This is coordinated." Michael's rifle steadied. "Then we hold the line." The first wave burst from the snow. German shepherds, Malinois, Rottweilers, muscles coiled, collars studded with sensors that blinked red. They moved like a unit, not scattered beasts, but a formation. Troopers opened fire. Muzzle flashes lit the night, bullets cracking through the storm. The dogs darted, weaving in unnatural precision, some leaping onto crates, others circling wide. Michael's heart wrenched. These weren't just animals, they were captives, twisted into weapons. He fired low, aiming to disrupt without killing, but the swarm was relentless. One shepherd lunged, slamming into him, jaws clamping his sleeve. Michael twisted, throwing it aside, but another snapped at his boots. Sierra's growl tore through the chaos. She had forced her way from the truck, 3 days after birth, staggering but unyielding. Her hackles rose as she stood between Michael and the advancing horde. "Get her back," Olivia shouted, racing after Sierra. But Sierra didn't retreat. She barked once, sharp and commanding, a sound that cut through the din. For a heartbeat, the attacking dogs faltered. Their formation stuttered. Michael's eyes widened. She knows the commands. She was trained with them. Sarah fired from cover, shouting over the gunfire. "Then use it! Break them!" Michael's mind raced back to K9 training drills years ago. He whistled, sharp and high. Down. For a split second, Chaos wavered. Two shepherds froze mid-charge, ears flicking, instincts colliding with the conditioning forced on them. Sierra barked again, chest heaving, commanding. A few dogs backed, whining low. But then Vaughn's voice cut through the storm from the switching tower. Forward! The red sensors on the collars pulsed. The dogs snarled and surged again. Michael's stomach twisted. They weren't just trained, they were controlled. The collars... "Shoot the collars!" he roared. Troopers adjusted aim. Bullets sparked, shattering blinking devices. Dogs collapsed, not dead but freed, confusion replacing fury. Some bolted into the woods, others lay trembling in the snow, as if waking from a nightmare. But more kept coming. A second wave, larger, broke from the trees. Olivia dragged Sierra back, cradling her trembling body as she collapsed from exhaustion. "She can't hold out." Marquez, pale but fierce, staggered to her feet. "The control hub. Kane uses a frequency to sync them. Shut it down and you break the pack." Michael's eyes locked on the tower, where Vaughn stood, a handheld device glowing in his grip. Their eyes met across the snow. Vaughn sneered, raising the device higher. Michael's blood surged. "Cover me." He sprinted through the storm, bullets tearing snow at his feet. Dogs lunged, teeth flashing. Daniel Ruiz laid down suppressing fire, dropping two mid-air. Sarah shouted orders, troopers tightening their circle. Michael plowed forward, slamming his shoulder against the tower door. It buckled, then gave. Inside, metal stairs spiraled up, echoing with Vaughn's footsteps above. He charged, boots pounding, heart hammering. Halfway up, a shepherd lunged from the shadows, jaws snapping. Michael twisted, grappling, slamming it against the rail. Its collar blinked red. He yanked his knife, slicing the strap. The light died. The dog blinked, disoriented, then bolted past him down the stairs. At the top, Vaughn waited, rifle in one hand, control device in the other. His snake tattoo glistened with sweat. "You're too late, deputy," he snarled. "Kane's already moving the shipment. This," he waved the device, "is just a taste." Michael leveled his pistol. "Drop it." Vaughn smirked, thumb hovering over the trigger. "Make me." Michael fired. The bullet shattered the device in Vaughn's hand. Sparks exploded. Below, the attacking dogs faltered, some collapsing, others fleeing into the woods. The tide broke. Vaughn roared, charging with the rifle butt. They collided, crashing into the steel wall. The fight was brutal, raw. Vaughn swung wild, fueled by rage. Michael blocked, countered, fists and blood flying. Vaughn slammed him against the window, glass cracking under their weight. Snow howled through the fissure. Vaughn pressed close, breath rancid. "You can't stop Kane. He's already built the future." Michael drove his fist into Vaughn's gut, then his jaw. Vaughn reeled, stumbled against the rail. Michael lunged, cuff snapping onto Vaughn's wrist, then the other, slamming him down. "It's over," Michael growled. Vaughn spat blood, smiling through broken teeth. "No, deputy. It's just beginning." Below, troopers rounded up freed dogs, Olivia tending to the wounded, Sierra licking her pups weakly. Sarah shouted orders into her radio, securing the perimeter. For a fleeting moment, victory seemed real. Michael dragged Vaughn down the stairs, blood trailing from his split lip. The yard was littered with muzzle flashes fading, the chaos settling. Troopers stared as Vaughn was shoved into the snow, cuffed and snarling. "You'll never touch Kane," he hissed. "He's already gone." Michael knelt close, eyes burning. "Then we'll drag him back." As Vaughn was shoved into a patrol truck, Michael turned to Marquez. She was pale, trembling, but alive. "We got him," he said. Marquez shook her head weakly. "No, you don't understand. Vaughn was never the brain. Kane, he's moving east, with the real cargo." Michael frowned. "What cargo?" Marquez's lips parted, but her voice cracked. "Not dogs, something worse." The night quieted. Troopers checked weapons, dogs whimpered. For the first time, the yard was still. Michael's eyes drifted toward the horizon, where the storm was breaking. A faint glow lit the sky headlights, distant, moving fast. Not toward them, away. Olivia followed his gaze, her voice tight. "Michael, what is he taking with him?" Michael's chest tightened. He didn't know. But the convoy was already miles ahead, carrying something Kane valued more than an army of dogs. And if Marquez was right, it wasn't just animals anymore. The rail yard still smelled of smoke and cordite when dawn finally broke over Aspen Ridge. The snow glowed pale pink, masking the bloodstains and boot prints scattered across the yard. Vaughn had been hauled away, cuffed and snarling, his empire of collars and cruelty broken in the night. For the first time in months, the air felt lighter. But Michael Cole knew the storm wasn't over. Inside the makeshift infirmary, Olivia bent over Sierra and her pups. The shepherd's eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but her tail thumped weakly against the floor as Olivia whispered soft reassurances. The pups squirmed blindly against her belly, tiny sparks of life born in the middle of fire and bullets. Michael crouched beside them, his battered hands brushing gently over Sierra's fur. "You held the line," he whispered. "You saved all of us." Sierra blinked, slow and steady, as if she understood. Agent Linda Marquez sat nearby, a blanket around her shoulders, her face pale but defiant. Every so often, her gaze flicked toward the horizon, as though expecting headlights to reappear. She had given them Kane's route, east. The convoy had slipped past while they fought Vaughn. The real prize, she said, was something darker, something that had cost her 3 months in a concrete cage. Michael rose, muscles aching. Sarah Whitfield met his eyes, her voice rough from smoke. "We'll alert Denver field office. They'll intercept the convoy before Kane can vanish." Michael shook his head. "He's too smart for that. He's already covered his tracks." Grady stomped in from the snow, breath steaming. "Transport's ready. We'll get the rescued dogs to safety." He glanced at Sierra and her pups, his voice softening. They deserve better than cages and chains. Hours later, the community hall was crowded with townsfolk. Word had spread faster than the storm itself, what Kane had done, what the deputies had stopped, how a battered shepherd had given birth in the middle of gunfire. The mayor, Helen Crowley, stood on the small stage, her voice steady despite the weight of what she described. "This town has seen its share of winters, but last night we saw something more dangerous than snow or fire. We saw cruelty masked as commerce, and we saw courage fight back." She motioned to Sierra, who rested in a padded crate at the front, pups squeaking softly. This dog, and the men and women who stood with her, reminded us that justice is not abstract. It breathes, it bleeds, and sometimes it howls. Applause rose, hesitant at first, then swelling. Michael shifted uncomfortably, unused to the spotlight. Olivia squeezed his arm, whispering, "Let them see. They need this." Afterward, the town voted unanimously to repurpose the old firehouse, abandoned since the funding cuts. The brick walls would shelter not engines, but dogs. The sign painted above the door would read, "Aspen Ridge K9 Rescue and Training Center." Weeks passed. Snow melted into slush, then streams. The firehouse filled with new life, rescued dogs learning trust again, volunteers hammering boards and laying fresh straw. Olivia ran the medical wing with unyielding patience. Daniel supervised training yards, his youthful grin returning as pups tumbled over his boots. Sierra walked the grounds daily, her gait still slow from childbirth, her amber eyes proud. Her 3 pups grew strong, tumbling over each other in the spring sunlight. The town called them the firehouse litter, symbols of survival. Michael spent his evenings there, often sitting on the back steps with Sierra pressed against his knee. He still carried scars on his knuckles, on his ribs, deeper in places words couldn't touch, but in the steady rhythm of Sierra's breathing, he found a quiet he hadn't known in years. Yet the shadow lingered. Linda Marquez stayed in Aspen Ridge through her recovery. Sometimes she joined Michael on those back steps, her voice low. "You think it's over?" she asked one night. Michael shook his head. "Not while Kane's still breathing." She nodded, eyes dark. "Then neither of us sleeps." Spring turned green in the valley. The firehouse held an opening ceremony. Townsfolk gathered with ribbons and banners. Children laughed as they met the pups. Sierra stood tall beside Michael, wearing a new vest that read, "Hero Dog." Olivia placed a hand on Michael's shoulder as the mayor cut the ribbon. Cameras flashed. For a moment, it felt like closure. But later that evening, as the crowd dispersed and the firehouse quieted, Michael found a plain envelope slipped under the door. No name, no seal. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph. It showed a convoy of trucks on a dirt road, sun glaring off the hoods, and in the bed of one truck, a cage. Inside it, a massive dog, unlike any he'd seen. Its eyes glowed pale in the light, almost unnatural. On the back of the photo, scrawled in block letters, "He's not done." Michael's breath caught. He glanced at Sierra and her pups, sleeping in the pen, oblivious. Olivia called from the hall, her voice warm and tired. "Michael, you coming?" He slipped the photo into his jacket, his gaze drifting to the horizon beyond the firehouse windows. The sky was dark, clouds rolling, the kind that promised another storm. For the first time in weeks, his pulse raced. Kane wasn't finished. Michael's hand tightened on the photo until the edges curled. Somewhere out there, in the vast silence of the Rockies, a new kind of war was already waiting, and the question that burned in his mind refused to quiet. What exactly had Kane unleashed?